Hi, welcome to TQ Talks, where we talk taxes and tax-free living 365. Here are your hosts, Craig White, Sebastian Singh, and Patrick Augustin.
And we're back with another episode of TQ Talks. We're so happy you could be with us. We have a great guest with us today. If you don't know, you haven't been with us, we just want to tell you a little bit about our company. We are a tax and advisory firm. We try to help people to, of course, reduce the amount of taxes they might owe or increase the refund by giving them great information they could apply to their lives 365. We also help you with the advising or investing realm by helping and giving you information on the life insurance side that is little known that you can actually use to put yourself in a very good financial position. I'm Craig White, and with me as always is Mr. Singh.
Great being back, guys. Thanks for joining us once again.
And back with us again is, if you don't know, the world famous, the managing partner of RC Law Group, as well as the host of the world famous #1 podcast. It needs to be. If it isn't, we got to get it there. Chit Chatter with Ria, Miss Ria Chattergoon. Happy to have you here.
I like the applause.
We go all out, man.
Thanks for having me
Welcome.
again.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you guys are going to see a first podcast. I don't know which one's going to go first. But
hopefully you edit that
we're
one.
never editing. We're running it.
But before we get going,
talk.
Ms. Chattergoon, could you give us a quick intro on what your podcast, what information you deliver to us through the podcast and where they can find you?
And also what your company does. We'd like to know.
Okay, so I am the owner, managing partner of the RC Law Group. We do employment and personal injury law. I'm also a Florida certified mediator, so I mediate cases as well. The podcast, Chit Chatter with Ria, is a podcast to talk about the political process, to explain legal decisions to the average Joe, and really to talk about how the political process affects the average Joe.
Gotcha.
And why everyone should be engaged.
That's me, so I need to listen to her podcast.
You are not the average
even
Joe.
more.
You're not the average.
I'm the
What?
average
I don't
Joe.
understand any of the jargon as we brought up.
Yeah.
But you pay attention
So
to it.
that's a lot of the big stuff, though. But speaking to your point, when it comes to voting, and sometimes we don't understand what we're voting yes or no to, right? Like you brought that up a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important as well, how it's going to affect us.
Does voting affect taxes, Ms. Chattergoon?
I think so. I mean, absolutely. So, well, let's talk about voting. You vote on a federal, state, and local level, right? On a local, let's start with the local level. On a local level, you have city councilmen, commissioners who are
Pocketing
coming
money.
up with, well, we won't say that, but
They do get paid.
they get paid,
They're
but
civil servants.
But they, vote on ad valorem taxes.
What is
certain
that?
things that come up in your city.
But wait,
So-
what did you
Not
say
that
again?
that's the focus,
No, I didn't
but
know
what
that
is that?
Yeah,
So
sorry.
if you have say you're City of Hollywood, we're in City of Hollywood.
Okay.
City of Hollywood needs a water treatment plant needs repairing, right? And so there needs to be a special tax to the residents of City of Hollywood. So these people are the ones voting on that.
And would you call it's an
And
ad
so
valorem?
ad valorem taxes. I don't ask me to give you the
I need you to
specific
know this stuff.
definition.
Like,
I need to
you
write this
see
down.
me burning a hole in your head.
What was the word Pat
is
used
that?
the last time?
I don't know.
Man, you guys are
Intentionality.
killing me. No, he used something else.
All right, so maybe I don't know, man. That sounds like a no-brainer. If I'm
But
in
how-
Hollywood,
Uh-huh.
I don't care what part of Hollywood.
Right.
And the water treatment plant needs repairing.
It's a no-brainer.
I don't see where
But
I
when
can
do,
say
when do
no
we
to
vote
that.
for that? Do we vote that during like a
Local.
regular election? Like
It may
Ad
come up in
valorem.
it may come up in a midterm election. It may
Gotcha.
be but it may not even be an election. May not even voting for it. The people you voted to be in those positions
Oh,
are
makes
the
those
ones voting
decisions.
for
Oh,
it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So
wow.
so again, these are why you need to make sure you're voting in alignment with your interests,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I always talk about. What's important to you. I mean, these are, for example, Broward County.
Mm-hmm.
Voting on how much are you going to get for school taxes, right? Those taxes go to pay your teachers, repair buildings, do all of those things. So absolutely taxes play into voting and how it's done.
But you say voting for your interests. Is that where you is that a party line situation? Is that how that works?
It could be.
It could be.
So that, correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of times that's what people do is they vote straight up and down for their party.
I see that all the time.
But as you know, we also have politicians that jump from party to party with same or similar interests that they had at the previous party. So you could get caught up in that. You could switch from Republican to Democrat from one election to the other.
Gotcha.
And you're still the same human. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, Ms. Goon, I want to know, do you
I like that.
I'm sorry, Ms. Chattergoon, is it fair? Do you feel like it's fair that entrepreneurs and or business owners get more tax breaks than your salaried, like 9-to-5 W-2 employees?
Well, are we done with that first subject? Because I wanted to talk about it
We don't have to be.
on a federal level.
Do not have to be. We
So
could go right
does
back.
voting affect taxes? On a federal level, I want to say yes, right?
Okay.
So you vote for a senator, for your congresspeople, your House of Representative, your senator. Those are the people in Congress. Those are the people passing laws. Those are the people coming up with the tax cuts when everybody talks about tax cuts, right? But how does that happen? So in the House of Representatives, you elect these people. They then get placed on committees. Right.
Okay.
So the Ways and Means Committee, for example, is one of the most prestigious committees, and they're the ones who deal with taxes. They're the ones who deal directly with the IRS. For example, yesterday, the Supreme Court said that committee could get Trump's tax returns that he's been fighting about it for the last 6 years.
For a while.
They're the committee that could subpoena.
No, I don't watch that.
That could subpoena the taxes, but they're also the ones who come up with the tax cuts. So when everyone's talking about tax cuts for the rich and the change in the tax code or what do you call it?
Tax brackets.
Brackets, yes,
Okay.
brackets. These are the people who are coming up with it. How do you get on those committees, right? Well, first you've got to be voted into office.
Sure.
Right?
By the people.
By the people.
All right.
By the people. So every district has someone you're voting for, representative. You then have to be, for this particular committee, it's usually a senior member, right? It's sort of a prestigious committee. You can't really be on any other committee if you're in that committee just because it's so taxing.
Sure.
And so much work. But it's important, right? Because who do you have on these committees? I mean, we also have to think about most of the people running for senator or House of Representatives are usually wealthy people.
Sure.
They're wealthy individuals because you have to dedicate so much time to campaigning, running an election, and then serving in Washington for half of the time. So you can't hold a regular job when you're doing things like that. So you're usually a wealthy person. Wow. Well, how is a wealthy person going to vote when it comes to this, right? It's going to be to their benefit and to the benefit of their friends. They're not really looking at the average Joe, how it's going to help them. And we've seen that throughout, I would say, the last 40 years, right? I could talk on and on about how trickle-down economics doesn't work.
Does not work.
It does not work. Like we have a proven track record of how it doesn't work.
And what's the other side behind? So trickle down is one side, and then what's the other side? What do they say?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's essentially trying to make
more
of
it
an
even.
equal, more of an equal
trying to even out the tax
compensation
bracket
thing.
So
So what's supposed to happen with trickle down is that the wealthy get the money, and then
the business owners,
and
then
who happen to
supposedly,
and then it's supposed to trickle down to the everyday worker.
If they get more money, then they pay the workers.
And we know that
better,
doesn't happen, which they just keep more money. But the other side will say that we don't do that. That how do they
we need
say?
We need to tax fairly. And
what is fairly though?
So Jeff Bezos, who doesn't pay anything in taxes and makes billions of dollars, should be taxed.
Loopholes.
And that's
of course it's loopholes, but who are the loopholes voted by?
Individual, right? And then we have companies also.
Right.
Apple.
Right.
How much do they pay? Next to nothing.
Nothing.
Loopholes.
Sure.
Right.
But that's
that's to my point.
Right.
That's why voting's important, because who's voting on these loopholes?
So I'll ask.
No.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I had a question.
I did too.
So
about that. Just make sure I come back to that.
And let me just, for the record, say I am not an expert on this. I could be wrong on some of this.
That's
so please
fair.
You know more than us. You're the expert at this table.
Yeah.
So I know you touched on the wealthy representatives, right? Regardless where they come from, don't they end up becoming wealthy, and then we would lose whatever.
So that's something that
Like
is
substance.
They just automatically become wealthy because they're
I
inside.
mean, they get paid a lot more, right?
Okay.
Well,
I didn't know.
so
But you
your
or I could
average
run.
House of Representatives gets paid, I think it's $178,000 a year.
That's not a lot.
Plus federal benefits, though, right?
Yeah.
Then I think your senators get paid like $210, $2 something. I could be wrong on those numbers, but it's
Okay.
somewhere around those numbers,
not bad.
right? But here's the information. They get inside information. So there is a bill being introduced. It hasn't passed yet. But, they're in these committees knowing what's coming down the pipeline.
Right.
They're able to use the information they're not supposed to
Right.
on insider trading or owning stocks. So if I'm using Apple, for example, Apple is going to, start split and I should buy stock in this, I could give it to my husband and let him buy that stock,
Sure.
and then I become a millionaire. And so if you look at sort of the income level trajectory of some of these politicians, it's clear. It's
Right.
clear.
So it may not be that W-2 money,
Right.
but it's the
Right.
influence and at the circles that you sit that really get you to the
Right.
next jump.
So
Right.
my question was, because you had talked about the Ways and Means Committee, hope I was right on that, and how that they affect taxes, they deal with the IRS, et cetera, and then the people who are in those committees would normally vote on things that would benefit themselves. Is that correct?
Yeah, but that's just
theoretically.
human nature, though, right?
Right. So the reason I asked that is because when Trump put in 2018 implemented the Tax and Jobs Cut Act, people would fight and say that act really helped regular people more than it helped other people. Don't get me wrong. There's a bunch of stuff for businesses in there, but by reducing your tax brackets, by increasing the amount of money they're getting throughout the year.
But that's now expired, right?
It actually is supposed to last for 8 years. It's still running. And
Right.
so
But there's an expiry date.
there is, and the point would be that you re-elect or you re-vote or you change. And, that happens. Every president swaps in and out, and you change some things. But what I'm saying to you is, I hear that, and I'm saying, I'm just saying both sides of the coin. It seems like no matter what you do, someone wins, someone loses. But I think personally, when you're talking about I think we're going to jump onto, is it fair that the wealthy or the small business owners, because you talked about the people that didn't get,
tax
I'm always, and we talk about this in our household, I feel like it is fair. I feel like it's okay for them to get a bigger tax break because they are helping theoretically by providing more jobs for people, et cetera, et cetera. Do I think it's fair it's zero? No, I don't. But I feel like if you don't incentivize someone to do something, then what is the
But then you have to
purpose?
regulate it, right? So I don't mind big corporations getting tax breaks if they're providing the jobs, if they're raising wages, if they're paying their employees a livable wage.
Right.
That's not what's happening, because what we do know is the employment rate, even with Trump's tax cuts, went down. Not went down, went up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right? Like the unemployment rate was at 20-something% at some point.
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
So we do know that. We do know that since, and I don't remember the date off the top of my hand, but the minimum wage of $7.25 on a federal level has not raised in over 20-something years. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about these corporations, I mean, who can live on $7.25 an hour?
Right.
Right? You've got states voting to increase that minimum wage, but on a federal level, it isn't. And so
We're
those
not
are
up to
the
like
things,
13 or whatever it is right now?
Florida's going to go up to 12.
Okay.
But that's her
it's
point, is that we're changing it at the
By
state level.
not federally.
And
Right.
and
Oh,
that's
I
where
thought
the
it was federal.
regulation comes from.
Right.
So with no trickle down,
Correct.
we as a people need to know what it costs to actually live and
Right,
regulate
right.
that
I mean,
to the companies.
housing prices are going up.
Right.
I mean,
Crazy.
people can't afford to buy homes right
Can't
now.
rent. You can't
rent.
Yeah.
I mean, but these are the things that are not trickling down as
Okay.
far as, okay, I give Amazon a tax break.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
They're doing massive layoffs right now. They're laying off about 10,000 people.
Yes.
Right.
Despite their record profits.
Yeah, but
Right? So those are business decisions.
Right. I was going to say.
However, if I'm going to give you a tax break with to incentivize employment and to incentivize paying a livable wage, who's regulating that?
Well, that's always my beef when anybody's in politics, or and I'm way more in tune. I don't pay attention, but my basic mind is always frustrated when I watch and I hear all these rules and changes that are going on, because half the time I feel like people spit out things and no one is able to be held accountable for what occurs. Right. And that's part of my frustration or my lack of happiness when it comes to politics in general. And again, you're educating us, and man, we were trying to get our trademark educate, elevate, and empower done, but we couldn't get that finished. But anyway, that's part of what we try to do. So I hear your point. How do you solve that? You know what I mean? Is there a way to solve that? Is there a way to get the trickle down to actually work? Because theoretically, it sounds pretty good, right?
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. You already know that if you made triple the amount of money you have right now, or you make right now, you would not immediately pay your pool guy triple the amount.
No, I don't think that's what that meant.
It's essentially
it's supposed
the same
to trickle
thing.
down.
Yeah, like
right.
if
but it's
you're
not
doing
paying
better,
someone triple.
The people around you should also. Obviously, when we're talking about corporations or businesses, your employees and the people, the supplies you're bringing in, things like that. But it makes perfect sense to increase the profits. That's the whole point of.
But we know it doesn't work. Like, we've had now 30 years of trickle-down economics since the Reagan age, right?
And those gaps.
And we know it hasn't worked. What we do know is that the millionaires and billionaires have increased.
Of course.
Right? And the middle class is actually poor.
Shrinking.
And we have a shrinking issue with the middle class right now. And that's why I always talk about voting for your interests, because you do see middle class people voting for the interests of or against their interests, I should say.
Right. But with the trickle down, what I'm saying is the way it works now does not work. So here's my theory. And again, you guys can blast me and I get it. If our company makes more money, triple to your point, that would mean that in theory, there should be some regulatory things placed in the system that says, okay, great, we're helping your business to avoid these taxes and low this and whatever the case is. So now you have to hire up to XYZ based on this percentage rate of growth. And you have to do this based on this. To me, it's math. It's pretty simple.
But then you have to vote for the people who are putting in those regulations.
100%.
And you have to hope that the other people who other states voted for, other cities voted for, on that committee will agree to that, right? Because when you propose these bills first have to pass committee before they're presented to the larger body. And so most of these bills, we've got some great bills that are introduced on a federal and local state level. They just don't advance.
That's not good.
And they don't advance because one person's saying, all right, I'll give you this if you give me that.
Right.
And so there is a tug of war happening and a compromise. And I think what everybody expects is you're voting for someone who you're voting for perfection. And what people need to understand about politics is you're not going to get perfection. You're going to get compromise. And so you need to vote for someone who's a good negotiator at the table, someone who can get along with someone on the other side. You always tell me, why don't you run for office? I don't, because I will look at the other person who I know is not doing my constituents a favor, who I know don't have my constituents in their best interest, and I'm gonna cuss them out.
You should.
Right? But however, I understand that that's not how things get done.
No, that's a lie. That's not how it's supposed to get done.
We know that abrasive politics is harmful.
It's extremely
in
harmful.
Our communities.
It works.
Let's
no, it doesn't, because it doesn't get anything done
in our communities.
I'll stay quiet because we're going to get on our conversation about that.
We don't.
But we know to Ria's point is that you got to be able to massage the system. You got to be able to work with everybody to get what you want and what your people want passed through. And a lot of that is continuing to vote for your interests, right? Yourself and your community, because the more people you have coming from the people of your interest, the more people that are up there that will agree.
Okay.
So it's going to take a while.
Not even from your interest, but also someone who can listen, right? Because listen to your interests and understand that they're there to serve your interests. So I always tell people, politicians are employees.
Right.
You get to hire and fire them every election cycle.
Right.
You get the choice whether you show up or not.
Listen, so Marco Rubio, who I dislike very much,
sure,
just got reelected again. He's a senator from Florida. The man doesn't even show up to work. Like, he does not show up to vote on specific issues that affect Floridians, right? He doesn't propose bills that help Floridians, and we keep voting him back in.
Why?
I could tell you why, but we'll be here for another hour, right?
I think that's part of it, though. I think part of it is.
But they're employees. To my point, they're
knowing.
Employees. They're employees, and so I wouldn't have my employee not show up to work and not do their job and keep them on. I'd fire them.
Right.
Right. Why don't we have that same mentality when it comes
to
politicians?
And you know that. You know that. You know a lot of your frustration is because you don't think things happen. You don't think that your vote would count and things like that, because it takes a lot more of the you. It takes the you, me, and everybody around us.
Right. So his employees showed up
continuously. His employers
showed up
and were like, yes.
Okay, well,
you're doing what we want you to do for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, but I mean, that's kind of the way our system works.
So, what are your suggestions to move our community? Give me 3 of your top things you would say to anybody, whether they be a little younger and entering the voting age, or at 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever level. But I guess from our communities, let's say.
1, determine what your interests are, right? So whether they're economic, whether they're familial, whether whether it's education, pregnancy. I mean, abortion's a big thing. I mean, figure out what your interests are.
Right.
Understand that you can't be a one interest voter. Though,
Boy, say that again.
Right? You cannot vote based on one issue.
So frustrating.
Right? Now, sometimes you have to, depending on who the person is, right? So for example, when people were voting for Trump, I'm like, how can you vote for this racist man? Regardless of whatever, I mean, he didn't have any policies, but regardless of what policy attracted you to him. That's what
sure.
I mean, for sure. Yeah. I mean, this man's getting up there talking about Black people and Mexican people, and he's a blatant racist. And so I can't vote for anybody like that, right? I might vote for the hidden racist who says they're not going to vote for an abortion bill. But they're not blatantly out there that they're racist.
You just don't know yet.
You don't know. You don't know. But I would say figure out what your interests are. Mm-hmm. Research candidates
that's
when they come up.
Right.
Research and talk to people about, talk to people who may know more than you. Go to forums. I mean, with the age of social media, and what a good thing about COVID is that a lot of these forums, so League of Women Voters, for example, is one that I listen to all the time. The NAACP does a lot of forums. You've got your local voluntary bar associations that do forums. A lot of this has been placed on social media and live streaming. So you actually don't even have to go anymore, right? So
But we involved. do. We have to be intentional about who we follow and where we get our information, right?
Right.
I would say watch all the news channels. I think it's very interesting. I don't watch news.
Man, I'm good. I'm good on that. I won't ever suggest that,
reason,
because I know.
Let me tell you why, though.
We all have limited times.
But I'm going to tell you the awesome reason why you watch that. Because if I watch Fox News and they're talking about you, Sebastian, they'll say one thing. Then I turn to, CNN. They're talking about you, and it is the total opposite thing.
Well, believe trends.
But the reason why I'm saying that.
Back to my top 3, though. My third one is go vote.
Go vote. Yeah. I say watch those only because you guys can realize how twisted both sides can be.
True.
To educate
both
yourself.
Sides.
That's all I meant by that. Like, you'll realize that, man, they can skew on both sides, and not right or wrong. I don't know.
And it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse in the past 5 years because
the
divide is just. I mean, everybody's so far right and so far left. I will tell you, prior to the past 5 years, I could be enticed by a Republican candidate. I mean, depending on who it was. Like, I always tell people, John Kasich had the Republicans voted for him in their primaries in 2016.
That's the guy's name I can never remember.
I mean, he's now switched to being a Democrat.
Right.
But I liked him.
Right.
Now he's pro-life, not pro-choice, and so that's a big deal to me. But
again, it's not a one interest.
He actually had policies he could explain.
Gotcha.
Right.
But I think we've moved so far past that.
Yeah.
We are so far past that.
On purpose.
And I don't think we're actually going to get back to having a center.
Got you.
Well, tell us once again where we could find you and listen to your podcast.
Amazing, world famous podcast.
So we make sure we get your information out there as well.
Follow me on social media at Chit Chatter. You can follow me on my law firm page at RC Law Group, on Facebook, Instagram. I'm not on TikTok yet. I just can't get into it. I'm too old.
You'll get there.
Yeah. And my website is www.therclawgroup.com.
The RC Law Group. Accident, slip, and fall. You guys make sure you give her a call. You got that? See how I put that together?
Got it.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Again, for listening in. Ms. Chattergoon, thank you for being here with us and giving us all that great information.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. We look forward to, again, maybe having you in here again.
Please like, share, comment, and follow us on all social media platforms, but also more specifically to this on your podcasting platforms.
If
Thanks
Pat
for
was
joining us
here,
once again.
Peace out, deuces, Pat. That's for you, Patrick. We love you.
Thank you for listening to TQ Talks. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at tqfinancials.com.